Hello, YouTube. I want to tell you about a virtually unknown in the West event, but it should not be overlooked. Let me present the general picture first, and then I'll give you some more details. It's a complicated event. Let me start with geography. Bashkortostan, officially the Republic of Bashkortostan, also known as Bashkiria, is a republic of Russia located between the Volga River and the Ural Mountains in Eastern Europe. It contains 143,600 square kilometers and has a population of 4 million people. Very interesting land, by the way. On the night of May 18 in the year of 1990, a meteorite fell 20 kilometers from the Bashkir city of Sterlitamak. Arriving from the constellation Virgo, the Sterlitamak meteorite still raises questions among scientists, and not only scientists. The radiation found near its crater seems especially strange. The next day after the fall, local journalists arrived at the funnel. The media found that the diameter of the funnel was about 10 meters, and the depth was 5 meters. By that time, the small parts of the bolide had already been assembled. Despite this, scientists from the USSR Academy of Sciences were basically able to find two fairly large pieces weighing more than 3 and 6 kilograms. The history of the discovery of another, the strangest meteorite fragment weighing more than 300 kilometers, is shrouded in mystery. Its location was allegedly discovered with the assistance of a local resident interested in ufology who looked at the photo from the crash site. The local resident claimed that it was possible to do find the fragment, by simply moving his hand over the picture. At a certain point in the photo, his fingers began to tingle slightly. And indeed, where the amateur ufologist pointed out, a fragment of the meteorite lay under a pile of soil. Well, please remember this, because I'll provide another account of the discovery later in this video. Today, the fragments of the meteorite are located in the Ufa Museum of Archaeology and Ethnography of the Russian Academy of Sciences. Analysis of the celestial body has demonstrated that 90% of it consists of iron. In addition, there are other metals found on Earth in the chemical composition of the body. That's what's being stated. In terms of size, the bolide is in the second place after the Sikhote-Alin, which weighs over 1.7 tons. Please see my video about that very interesting celestial visitor. The URL is in the description to this video. I think you will be amazed. But let's get back to Bashkiria. The excavation conducted by scientists has now turned into a lake where fish even began to live. Locals note that the water in it is unusual. It's blue in color. I will get back to the lake too. Unexplained things started happening. Some of the oddities associated with the fall of the meteorite began from the moment of its landing. Eyewitnesses recalled that the bolide was flying along a non-standard zigzag trajectory. A few days after the fall, residents of Bashkiria observed UFOs in the sky. Some people associate such unusual phenomena with an alien attempt to inform Earthlings of some encoded information. But was it encoded in the meteorite? Scientists of the Russian Academy of Sciences, in turn, rejected the hypothesis about the intervention of an alien civilization. Radiation near the crater formed after the fall also raises questions. On the territory of the fall of the celestial body, Experts carried out measurements of the radiation level, and it turned out to be normal. However, a certain magnetic anomaly at a great depth under the funnel was registered. According to TASS news agency, a few years ago, scientists again discovered powerful magnetic anomalies there, which indicate that part of the meteorite is most likely still in the ground at a depth of up to 3 meters. In addition, scientists cannot explain the nighttime observations that enthusiasts made a few days after the meteorite fell to Earth. Observations have shown that in the area of the crater above the funnel, luminous domes, rainbow hemispheres, suddenly appeared and disappeared. But now I want to give you more details. This will allow you to understand the complexity of the event and, I think, more amazing properties of the meteorite. Well, from a bird's eye view, it looks like an island in the ocean. Unique aerial shots that no one has shot here before in that area. This is nothing but a crater from the fall of a meteorite near Strelita Mach, a worldwide event that few people know about nowadays. Although the moment of its fall 33 years ago was seen by hundreds of people. So let's look at Strelita-Maksky district, Oktyabrskaya village, May 1799. Okay, it was the day to pay the visit to the public bathhouse, according to the nurse of the local clinic, Alevtina Alexeyeva. The woman remembered that her route that evening for the rest of her life, because it almost became her last. With 2 small children, she was returning home from the bathhouse. They were walking along the central street of the village when it got dark, closer to midnight, and suddenly it became as bright as day. And here above her was such an explosion, a ball of fire. She thought it was either the aliens or the airplane exploded over her head. Alevtina's children screamed, grabbed her legs, screamed again, and as she stood petrified, she thought she was going to die there. She was going to fail. Alevtina Alexeyeva was the eyewitness to the meteorite fall. The meteorite fell in the field just 1.5 kilometers from the settlement, only miraculously not impacting residential buildings. From the blast wave, people fell to the ground, and the alarm went off in the shops. Now, Samat Baatgudinov was an eyewitness of the meteorite fall, and he told this. It was buzzing from above as if yelling, that object, and then it exploded. The women walked calmly after the bath house session, towels hanging, and they, just like this, fell down. Some swayed, some ran away to the side. In all of the stores, the cash registers and the alarm system started operating automatically. Vyacheslav Nikiforov, at that time a 16-year-old schoolboy, was the closest to the crash site at that moment. Together with his classmates, he was sitting on a bench on the outskirts of the village. He recalls, curiosity overcame fear, and the children rushed straight to the epicenter. And here's what he said. We got up from the bench, run, and then the shock wave goes, the roar, of course, at first, like an explosion. Then there was a shock wave. We only managed to run 5 meters, and we were knocked down straight. We got up and ran again. We didn't reach the site by 200 to 300 meters only. A year later, Vyacheslav becomes a key figure in the history of this meteorite event. It is he who accidentally found the main fragment weighing more than 300 kilograms, for which he actually received as a prize a motorcycle Minsk. It was the reward for the discovery. But more on that later. In the meantime, let's go back to the moment of the fall. By morning, there was a whole delegation on that field on the edge of the formed crater. Geologists from Ufa and Moscow began studying the crater. Geologist Emir Gareev was the leader of the expedition to the place of the meteorite fall. Initially, the crater had a diameter of about 10 meters and a depth of about 5. A special cable excavator was driven to the funnel to find the main part of the meteorite. After all, it became an exceptional event not only for Bashkiria. This was only the second crater-forming meteorite fall in the 20th century on Earth. Not in Bashkiria, not in Russia, but on Earth. Someone will say, yes, it cannot be. Yes, thousands of meteorites fall on Earth every year, but they mostly burn up, and they are not found. The excavation at that site continued for a whole year, entire year. To pump out groundwater, a pumping station was installed. Electricity was conducted to the area. Geologists had to spend the winter near the crater, but the meteorite literally fell through the ground. In the spring, the search was curtailed, the equipment left. The search for the guests from outer space had already been given up. But a lucky chance helped. In the pile of earth, of soil next to the funnel, a meteorite was found by school children and by Vyacheslav Nikiforov, who is already familiar to us. The meteorite was right on the path. Geologists dug it up but did not notice it, and they walked on it. The rains had passed and it was slightly washed away. The iron was already visible. The boy, Nikiforov, had an iron ruble with him, a coin. So he knocked on the object, and yes, there was iron in the object. So they started digging up, and there really was a meteorite. Well, the meteorite, despite its impressive weight of 315 kilograms, turned out to be only a meter in diameter, about a meter. During the search, the excavator seized it with a bucket and threw it into the dump along with the soil. In the wet clay, the space object simply went unnoticed. Well, the tractor driver, Nikolai Kartsev, arrived at the site immediately after the meteorite was discovered by local children. He says he received an order from the director of the state farm to take the object to the local barn. Unable to withstand such a load, the tractor almost reared up on the road. So the tractor driver said that I drove up, the kids are standing next to it. I drove up backwards, hooked it with a bucket and drove away. It was a bit heavy, the front end was rising. Everyone was coming and groped the object. From that moment on, the meteorite, which was named after the place of the fall, Stelitamoksky, was involved in a whole tangle of intrigues of different levels. When this meteorite was discovered and people went to pick it up, it turned out that it had already been transported to the local barn, locked up, and the director of the local collective farm made demands. They say, you ruined my arable field, caused damage, so there's a ransom. But then, like in the movie The Godfather, they made him an offer which he could not refuse. An entire motorcade came for this meteorite. The head of the Soviet traffic police, local, of course, department, the ministers promised the collective farm a new tractor, and the director was also satisfied. Here is the testimony of Ishak Farkhudinov, the head of the Department of Geology of Bashkir State University, and the grandson of Murat Kamal Eddinov, at that time the director of the Ufa Institute of Geology. So he says that according to his grandfather's stories, the Stelitamak meteorite was also in the center of a political conflict. You see, the Soviet Union had a vertical collectivist system, and as his grandfather told Itzhak, there is a decree to transfer all this to Moscow, meaning the find, and therefore the locals managed to organize a meeting in the cabinet of ministers, and to save the meteorite for the local use, they assigned the status of national treasure to this meteorite. so it would not be taken away from the republic. But please recall that this took place during the Gorbachev's reign. It was very different to what took place in my motherland under Lenin, Stalin, Khrushchev, or Brezhnev. And still, Ishak Farhudinov also recalled that he was even denounced to the KGB. He actually had a chance to read the denunciation himself. 3 Bashkir academicians, top scientists, wrote denunciations against him, allegedly that he wanted to sell the meteorite to the Americans. It's crazy. It's worthless, said Ishak. How can it be sold? Asked the geologist. But this story is more complicated than that. Emir Gareev, at that time the employee of the Russian Academy of Sciences, found himself on the other side of this confrontation. He says it was about transferring to Moscow not the whole meteorite, but only a part of it. To do this, they began to saw off the fragment using special equipment, but they just did not have time. And he's referring to himself and his colleagues. Indeed, he was doing this cutting, so to say. He and his colleagues were promised if they give this piece to Moscow, they will be given many times more in return, samples of other meteorites, and then they would create their own collection of meteorites here in Bashkiria. And then some kind of entanglement began. They were hindered in everything they were doing. How? Sawing off the stone. What are you? In no case is it possible. This is barbarism. But according to Gareev, this is not barbarism at all. This is a worldwide practice. They do it. What's the big deal? It would be possible to saw off to look at the intersection. Well, they didn't give it to Gareev and his colleagues. They stopped this process and that's it. They said no to sawing off a piece of meteorite. The meteorite was declared a national treasure of the Republic. In general, it was impossible to look at or even breathe around it, he says. Now, according to Alexander Kolonsky, the meteorite was brought to Ufa. Since then, it has been kept in the Museum of Archaeology and Ethnography. The meteorite is the only exhibit in the museum that is allowed to touch. And this is very useful for visitors because there is a belief that if you touch a meteorite and make a wish, it will definitely come true. At first glance, it's a joke, but in our case, said Kolonsky, it has been proven in practice that the meteorite fulfills wishes. It is enough to touch it. And touching it, you touch the outer space. It's kind of, you stroke it, you make a wish. Kind, honest, fair, and it will definitely come true. Let's go back to Emir Gareev, geologist, who added this. Despite all the twists and turns, scientists still managed to establish the material composition of this celestial body. For research, one of the small fragments was cut off. This is the so-called iron-nickel meteorite, which has a mineral crystal structure. It is impossible to meet such an alloy on Earth. In fact, it is a fragment of a planet, part of its core. So he says it's not possible to find such an alloy on Earth. And I told you something different before. Yeah, it's a very complicated case. As a rule, these are pieces of celestial bodies, stars, planets, and this is Gareev continuing. If we take iron meteorites, this is the middle part of this planet. For Earth, of course, it is unique because its mineral composition is such that we cannot see such minerals on Earth. Maybe only somewhere in the depths where temperatures are high, but we can only assume. The Ufa Planetarium Observatory has its own small collection of meteorites. Sikhote-Alin, Tsarevsky, Chelyabinsk meteorite. By the way, I need to add another also videos about Chelyabinsk. Anyway, they are called aliens from outer space. The main types are ironstone and ironstone. And on the surface of each of them, the entire history of light and fall is literally imprinted. And that's according to astronomer Anatoly Denisov. Here's a meteorite flying. Its frontal part is heating up. Here the gases hot are heated to 1.5 thousand degrees. The mass of the meteorite is flowing around. It is heating up in the frontal part. Some of them fly to the sides. Such hot plasma and such so-called whiskers are formed. And then we see the tail of the meteorite. It was found, according to Denisov, that the Steli-Tamak meteorite came from the constellation Virgo. Its flight in the night sky for 8 seconds was observed by a school astronomy teacher. Suddenly, he saw a dot in the constellation Virgo that moved. He thought at first that it was a satellite, but it started moving too fast. Literally in 7 to 8 seconds, it approached and became a fireball, a bright, glowing body. It swoops down on the neighborhoods, and all the way to the earth, everyone saw the tail and a flash at the end. It lit up the neighborhood near Steli-Tamak. Later, it was possible to calculate the approximate trajectory of the fall. The body flew almost from south to north and fell 20 kilometers from Steli-Tamak. The glowing bolide was observed by residents of almost the entire southern part of Bashkiria. A book had been published about the meteorite. However, according to scientists, it has not yet been fully investigated. Geologists agree that there is still a large part of the space alien weighing presumably about 1 ton, under the ground. The pond, the lake, call it whatever you want, which was formed at the site of the meteorite fall, has now become a favorite vacation spot for local residents. Children swim there. Fishermen get carp that weighs kilograms. Huge fish. And this is by no means, this is important. This is not like a small fish. The depth in the center of the pond reaches 15 meters. Ali Ahmed Wahitov is an experienced geophysicist who has worked at many radiation-related facilities. He also arrived at the site of the fall of the Steli-Tamak meteorite in the 1990s, a few days later after the fall, to measure the radioactive background. He stated, "I came to the field. The field was implanted in the spring. I saw a funnel with a diameter of about 8 meters and planks to prevent people from falling there, and, from tractors falling there. When I arrived, I immediately started looking with the device. There was no increased radiation there. The same radiation background. So, we swim here, we fish." According to Samad Bagaudinov, the resident of the village Oktyabrskaya, here's what he said. "Moreover, the locals believe that the water here even has healing properties. I have one friend. He had asthma. I brought him here to swim. He then asked me to take me here again, and it was already in the month of September, and I say it's cold, and he says no. It became easier for me then, and so he cured asthma in 3 swimming sessions." Okay? It is known that the meteorite has an iron-nickel composition. It is impossible to meet such an alloy in nature. Experts believe that, in fact, it is a piece of the core of another planet. Mostly meteorites of stony nature fall to the ground, and this one has a ferruginous nature, much rarer, according to Natalia Nasirova, head of the Expedition and Exhibition Department of the Steli-Tamak Museum of Local History. We have a small fragment of the meteorite. Moreover, for security reasons, we only exhibit a copy of it. In the year 2000, we organized an expedition to search for additional fragments, but we found only slag. Now, the lake with a depth of 15 meters has formed at the site of the meteorite fall, where, according to local residents, I want to repeat, there are carps that weigh kilograms. And of course, in warm weather, again, vacationers like to swim there. Emir Gareev, the geologist, he said also the following. Now the Stirlitamak meteorite has been unfairly forgotten. It fell in the pre-internet era, unlike its Chelyabinsk brother, whose fall in 2013 was captured by dozens of cameras, and these shots quickly gained popularity in the internet. The meteorite has become the hallmark of the region. Thousands of tourists come to the place of its fall, Chebarskur Lake, every year, but only residents of the surrounding villages can find their way to the crater in Bashkiria. The meteorite ecosystem is forgotten. Nobody knows anything. Well, a meteorite and that's it. And this is a unique phenomenon. It is necessary to tell more. It is very interesting. We need to make it a geological monument and take excursions, day trips there. Now, Platon Fyodorov concluded by saying this. In recent years, science has brought space so close that it has made it almost tangible. We watch high-definition video broadcasts. People have been living in orbit for years. Research probes land on planets and asteroids. And yet, when heavenly messengers become guests of the Earth, it still seems like something fantastic. After all, for a person, a meteorite is an opportunity to touch outer space in literal sense. As such, there is no mass interest among visitors to our exhibit, says Albert Akhatov, a researcher at the Museum of Archaeology and Ethnography of the Russian Academy of Sciences. It used to happen that people who were fond of esoteric matters, came and were charged, so to say, with energy, since you can touch a meteorite with your hands. And in order to arouse children's interest, I tell them that this is a shooting star 4 billion years old. So it cannot be called this exhibit, a visiting card of our museum. The main flow of visitors, they go to the Golden Deer exhibit of the Filipovsky Mounds. According to scientists, the probability that a larger meteorite will hit the Earth is very high. Ishak Farkhudinov is sure that international consolidation is needed to study such incidents. When a meteorite with a diameter of 11 kilometers fell in Mexico 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs died out, and now there is such a possibility, the scientists continued. It is necessary to organize an international program for space tracking of celestial bodies. Telescopes of one country cannot cope. They cannot cover the entire space. Moreover, large meteorites need to be stopped. We need to be able to stop them. Here's what I will add. Pay attention to the lake. It has fascinating qualities. Maybe one day the lake and the site will be researched comprehensively. Who knows? I think there is something under the lake, and I'm not the only one, so it's not just my opinion. As for meteorites and their strange properties, you know what? One day I'll tell you about Namibia, Southern Africa. I visited many years Southern Africa, so I know something about Namibia as well, but from people who had actually hunted and lived there, about its celestial visitors and an ancient plant that grows in certain areas of that country. You know, one day I probably will. But for now, this is the story of the meteorite unjustly forgotten in Bashkiria. And I think if more people knew the properties of that lake, I think the tourism would be very big in that area. But maybe we shouldn't bring tourists to such areas, because I've seen what's been done to other sites. Again, this is not up to me. My job is to tell you about such interesting cases that, again, few people know about in the West, and I think the same pertains to other parts of our world. And if you like my research, you can definitely help me. You'll find the links in the description to this video. on how to do it. And please subscribe to my channel. Please tell others. Please like my videos. Thank you for your attention to my work.